Okay, so I think we are live at this moment. Sorry for the technical difficulties. We had some issues with the going live there. But the purpose of today's video is really to go over what the purpose of the actual audit group is going to be about. And so the way we visioned it is that the audit group is going to be a place for anyone and everyone to talk about audit, material and studying for the exam. So what we posted here was a multiple choice question. The last one that we did, actually, we've been posting a few through the weeks. This one specifically is on substantive procedures related to, or excuse me, analytical procedures and planning of the audit. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to read the question and then go over. Now, as you can see on the screen, what happens here is that you have, once you post the answer, it kind of gives me, so you kind of have an indication here on which question is the correct, what's the correct answer choice. But independent of that, when you actually are going through it on the audit group, you won't see this. So, what we're going to do is we're going to pick certain multiple choice questions that we give, and we're going to choose. Now, this one, some of the candidates that I'm working with privately had some issues, and I think it's a good one to go over because it's a simplistic question. And as many of you know, especially on the exam, you're not really going to have these long, arduous questions. They're going to be real basic. And this is one that is real basic. And there's, a little bit of a kind of curveball, but we'll talk about that. So which of the following, I'm just going to jump right into it. So I'm reading the stem. Which of the following best describes the purpose of analytical procedures applied in planning of the audit or an audit, okay? And so when I see the analytical procedures, obviously this is if you are involved in audits, you know that the analytics are a tremendous part of the audit, both at the planning and the conclusion. And there's my first hint. So when I read an analytical procedures question, the first thing that I look at is what phase of the audit that you're in. So the phase that they're in right now is planning an audit. And that's tremendously important because substantive procedures are only required during the planning and the conclusion part of the audit. Excuse me, I said substantive again. It's analytical procedures. Analytical procedures are only required during the planning or the conclusion of the audit. And that's important because you're going to hear if you're on a team that's doing audits, or if you're not, I'll tell you, analytical procedures, there's 3 times that you're going to use them. There's twice is it required, which is planning and conclusion. For substantive, the middle part, right? So if you kind of look at this out, you kind of have planning, substantive, conclusion, okay? When, you can't see that, sorry, conclusion, okay. When you are kind of going through this, let me just see if I can move that over. Yeah, okay. When you're going through the actual material and you're kind of trying to figure out where you are, that's probably your best step, right? Is understanding, okay, each one of these questions, I promise you on the exam, is going to tell you which part of the audit that you're in. So if I'm in the planning audit, you know that the analytics are required, and they're required at the conclusion right here. This is not required. And so a lot of questions are going to try to trip you up. So this very same question, the reason why people have some issues with it is not because it's a difficult question, because all I got to do is change the planning and call it substantive, okay? And all of a sudden now it's a different answer, okay? So on the planning part of the audit, the primary purpose of an analytical procedure is not to wrap up the audit like you are in the conclusion, but it's more just to get an understanding of the entities in this industry and business. And what they're not saying here, which I think is important, and another type of question that you can see, or an answer choice, is identify areas of potential risk. When I'm working through these analytical procedures at the planning part of the audit, what I'm really looking for is what risks do I see on a base by, and so the analytics are the best really way to do that. And so for those that don't know what analytics are, right, there are the comparing the numbers at every individual account, we'll call it account level, and those are going to be compared against the last year's numbers. And then there's going to be expectations, right? There's a big push having you need expectations in order for you to have a pure analytic. And sometimes ratios are a good one. So comparing it against the industry and what other people are doing, that's very important. But what's the most important, okay, is that you cannot have, if you are required to do analytical procedures, the planning part. Okay, now let's jump to substantive, because this is where people go wrong. This is where I've seen most people get these questions wrong. On the substantive part of the audit, you may do analytics, but you do not have to do analytics. And so the substantive part of the audit is kind of the heavy lifting of the audit, where you're doing the testing of the cash, the AR, and so on and so forth, the expenses, the revenue. Okay, when you're going through and actually doing the substantive part of the audit, you're going to see a lot of your team members, or on the exam, you can use analytical procedures, but you do not have to use. It's not a requirement. Okay, conclusion, it is a requirement. So the two places that it is required is the planning and the conclusion. The point I'm trying to make is that you have to know where you are in the audit, because this question changes, okay, depending on where you are in the actual audit. So that's kind of my first little question there. And the reason why I picked this one above all the others is because I think it's for the first time that you actually see that if you feel like you're memorizing questions, which you should not be doing, memorizing questions happens because you think you saw this last question. So I can very easily switch out planning to substantive, okay? And you don't need analytical procedures. So I say that because if I look at some of the wrong answer choices, to detect fraud in financial statements, that's always there, right? You should always be doing that. So that's not right. It says, which of the following best describes, let me see if I can get an eraser here, right? Best describes the actual, let's see if I can move this over here. Okay, I think it's all there. So which of the following best describes the purpose of analytical? Okay, to detect fraud, now, if it was maybe at the conclusion, but let's just say that that's always an aspect. To assess the company's ability to continue at a going concern, it's definitely wrap up, but it's not the primary purpose of analytical procedures. You may use analytical procedures for the going concern analysis, right? And for those, the going concern is looking at the 12 months after when you are supposed to issue the financial statement. But it's not the best. You see, on the exam, that word best is a killer, because it kind of, these other things can be used, but it's not the best purpose of an analytical procedure at the planning. And the only real purpose, well, I shouldn't say the only, because we kind of double dip, right? And some of the stuff that we do in the planning, we use in the conclusion, but that's the first time you're seeing some of the numbers. So in reality, at the planning part, when you're getting these analytics, you're not trying to close anything down. You're just trying to get your arms around is what is going on in this company on a financial statement level by account, or by assertion level, but it's not the primary or the best that describes the purpose. To test compliance with control procedures, well, that's control testing, right? You don't use an analytical procedure to look, and that's not the purpose of a control, right? Control is about the entity, but it's not the best that describes the analytical procedure. So you see, this is a very simplistic question. I mean, even the answer choices are low words, right? People that work with me know that I always tell you, when you see little words on the exam, those tend to be the trickiest, okay? More words, it could be tricky, could be not, but when there's a little bit of words, those are the ones that you have to really kind of pay attention to, because they try to kind of trip you up a little bit. And the word best is another big word that you have to pay attention to. So whoever answered the question B on this, good work. For those that, I know sometimes what I'm noticing is in the group, people don't want to choose an answer choice if they're not 100% sure of a question. But I will tell you, the more feedback I get, I will keep it anonymous in who's answering what in terms of, doing these videos. But I think the more information I get, right, because if I see people getting question wrong, I'll tend to focus on those videos before others. So if you have any questions, share it on the group, and nice to get on here for the first time and go live. All right, talk to you soon.